Section 1. The deal of the century. Or at least, that's what the headline screamed. The confetti rained down, and the fireworks lit up the night sky to celebrate. It was supposed to be a moment for the history books. A deal so big, so bold, that it would reshape the very foundation of North American trade and politics. Or was it? Right. Because behind every explosion of celebration there's always a flicker of doubt. The crowd cheered, but not everyone was convinced. Some raised their eyebrows, others whispered, "Is this really the deal of the century or just another political show?" Let's talk about deals, the kind that come with fireworks, handshakes, and promises to change history. The kind that politicians love to announce with a flourish, as if they're unveiling a new era. This was supposed to be that deal, the one to end all deals, the one that would make headlines, win votes, and maybe even earn a spot in the next history textbook. Enter Donald Trump, a man who loves the word deal almost as much as he loves a well-done steak. He stepped up to the podium, grinning, and unveiled his masterstroke, the American Prosperity and Security Pact, or APSP. This was his signature move, his legacy in the making. It was sold as the ultimate win, a renegotiation to put America first, second, and third. The fanfare was biblical. Supporters roared, headlines blared, and the message was clear. This pact would bring back jobs, build new factories, and turn the American economy into a supercharged bald eagle soaring above the competition. It was a vision of prosperity, strength, and national pride. But there was one tiny inconvenient detail: getting Canada to agree. Washington assumed Canada would simply roll over, sign on the dotted line, and maybe even apologize for taking so long. After all, what choice did they have? But that was the first big mistake, underestimating Canada. Negotiating with Canada wasn't like arm wrestling a polite neighbor. It was more like arm wrestling a grizzly bear just because you saw it sniff a flower. Sure, it looks gentle, but underestimate it at your own risk. The stage was set. Team America, led by Trump, armed with tariffs, tweets, and a relentless drive to win. Team Canada, led by Justin Trudeau, the yoga-practicing, refugee-welcoming prime minister with a reputation for charm and calm. It was a clash of styles, personalities, and national interests. On paper, it looked like a mismatch. Heavyweight champ versus drama teacher. The world watched, expecting an easy victory for the Americans. But the Canadians had something else in mind. As the ink dried on the agreement, it became clear. Canada wasn't just playing defense. They had their own game plan, one that was far more cunning, strategic, and resilient than anyone in the Oval Office had imagined. The so-called deal of the century was about to get a lot more interesting. Section 2, the Great American Comeback Plan. So, what was in the APSP? In short, America gets more, Canada gets less. Trump wanted to dismantle old trade agreements, slap tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, and force American companies to buy American. He demanded cheap Canadian oil, strict quotas on lumber, and for Canada to boost defense spending, buying American military hardware, of course. The plan gave U.S. Customs sweeping powers to delay Canadian exports. It was less a partnership, more a list of demands. Trump's goal, a lopsided deal he could wave at rallies as proof he'd outsmarted Canada. It was about optics, dominance, and fulfilling a campaign promise, no matter the cost to the U.S.-Canada relationship. The plan wasn't just about economics, it was about proving who was boss. Section 3, the Canadian Counterpunch, a symphony of politeness and steel. In the face of mounting pressure and uncertainty, Canada found itself at a crossroads. The world watched, wondering if this famously polite nation would simply fold under the weight of American demands, or if it would find a way to stand its ground. Canada had a choice: fold or fight. They chose to fight, quietly, but with remarkable resolve. Instead of meeting bluster with bluster, Canadian leaders opted for a different path, one that would soon become a textbook example of strategic diplomacy. There were no angry speeches, no public outbursts. Instead, what unfolded was a masterclass in strategic patience and weaponized politeness. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his cabinet remained calm and composed, never losing their cool, and always insisting on a fair deal for both countries. Their approach was measured, deliberate, and above all, respectful. They never insulted President Trump or his administration. Instead, they framed the issue as a challenge for responsible adults to solve together. This subtle tactic made Canada appear reasonable and mature, while the U.S. administration, with its frequent outbursts, began to look increasingly petulant and unreasonable in the eyes of the world. But the real genius was happening behind the scenes. Canada launched what became known as the Team Canada approach, a coordinated effort involving premiers, mayors, business leaders, and union representatives. This diverse coalition fanned out across the United States, each member playing a crucial role in the diplomatic offensive. They lobbied governors and lawmakers in key states, making personal connections and building relationships. Their message was simple but powerful. Countless American jobs depended on healthy trade with Canada. They spoke not just to politicians but to business owners, workers, and community leaders, making the stakes clear for everyone. Armed with charts, data, and a steady stream of handshakes, Team Canada bypassed the White House entirely, choosing instead to reach out directly to the real power brokers in Congress and state governments. They presented hard facts, showing just how intertwined the two economies truly were. The strategy worked. Suddenly, American politicians, many of whom had never given much thought to cross-border trade, realized that a trade war would hurt their own voters, their own communities, and their own political futures. The message hit home. The fight was no longer framed as America versus Canada. Instead, it became clear that this was about protecting jobs and prosperity on both sides of the border. The economic ties were too deep, the consequences too real to ignore. Canada applied gentle, persistent pressure, never letting up. Over time, even some of Trump's staunchest allies began to see the value in compromise, turning into unexpected advocates for a fair and balanced deal. It was political jujitsu, using America's own political system, its checks and balances, and its web of interests, to Canada's advantage. By working the system from the inside, Canada managed to shift the narrative and the outcome. In the end, it was a quiet, devastatingly effective move, a symphony of politeness and steel that left a lasting mark on North American diplomacy. Section 4, A Tale of Two Leaders, Tweets versus Tactics. In this section we dive into the fascinating contrast between two very different leadership styles on the world stage. The contrast couldn't be starker. On one side you have Donald Trump, loud, impulsive, and unfiltered, wielding Twitter as his weapon of choice. Every tweet was a headline, every message a provocation. On the other side stands Justin Trudeau, calm, disciplined, and measured, refusing to take the bait, no matter how tempting it might have been. Trump fired off tweets at all hours, threatening tariffs, calling Canada dishonest, and doing everything he could to dominate the news cycle. His approach was to keep everyone off balance, to create uncertainty and pressure. He believed that chaos and sheer volume would force Canada to cave in, that relentless noise would break their resolve. Trudeau, meanwhile, stayed on message. He reassured Canadians with a steady hand, repeating, "Canadians are polite, but we will not be pushed around." His words were chosen carefully, designed to unite his country and project quiet strength. While Trump played to the cameras and the crowd, Trudeau's team worked behind the scenes. They built alliances with other world leaders, gathered crucial data, and prepared targeted retaliation strategies. Every move was calculated, every response deliberate. When the US imposed tariffs, Canada didn't just react, they hit back with precision. They targeted bourbon, dairy, and other products from key political states, making sure their response would be felt where it mattered most in American politics. For Canada, it wasn't about grabbing headlines or making noise. It was about achieving maximum political impact with minimum drama, using strategy over spectacle. In this high-stakes game, Trump played checkers. Quick, brash moves for immediate effect. Trudeau played chess, thinking several moves ahead, anticipating every possible outcome. The result? Canada's quiet, methodical tactics outmaneuvered America's bluster and bravado. Their strategy proved more effective than anyone expected. The real battle was fought in the details, in the careful planning and behind-the-scenes maneuvering, not in the tweets or the headlines. And in this contest of strategy versus spectacle, Canada was quietly winning. At first it looked like Trump's strategy might work. Tariffs hurt Canada, and the media painted them as desperate. But then, cracks appeared in the American position. Team Canada's lobbying paid off. Republican governors and senators started hearing from worried constituents. Farmers feared losing Canadian markets. Factory owners worried about supply chains. The American front fractured. Canada's retaliatory tariffs were a masterpiece, targeting products from politically sensitive states. Suddenly, US politicians got angry calls from their own voters. The trade war was no longer abstract, it was hurting Americans at home. Trump's tariffs, meant to punish Canada, backfired, raising costs and causing layoffs in the US. The narrative of American victory faded, replaced by stories of economic pain. The deal designed to prove who was boss was now making the boss look lost. As pressure mounted in the US, the dynamic shifted. The American side, once demanding, became desperate to make a deal. Canada, having weathered the storm, now negotiated from strength. They preserved the crucial dispute resolution mechanism Trump wanted gone. They protected their dairy and poultry industries, granting only minor concessions. The most damaging US proposals, fixed-price energy, extreme lumber quotas, were dropped. The final deal, rebranded as USMCA, looked a lot like the old NAFTA. Trump declared victory, but the substance told a different story. Canada had stood its ground, protected its interests, and enhanced its reputation for smart diplomacy. It was a quiet, very Canadian victory. After the USMCA, the US-Canada relationship was changed. On the surface, leaders declared a new era of cooperation, but trust had eroded. Canada realized its vulnerability and began diversifying trade, pursuing deals with Europe and the Pacific. The goal: never again be hostage to a single partner's whims. In the US, the episode was spun as a win, but policy circles saw the limits of brute force. The lesson: even smaller allies can fight back, and global supply chains make punishment a two-way street. The new reality is guarded cooperation, still partners, but more cautious. Canada will demand more assurances in future deals. The US learned its polite neighbor has a core of steel. The era of taking Canada for granted is over. What's the lesson from this drama? Never underestimate a quiet opponent. Canada's response showed that politeness isn't weakness, it's strategic strength. The Team Canada approach, mobilizing every level of government and industry, was a masterstroke. Influence isn't just about leaders, it's about building coalitions and understanding your opponent's politics. Canada won the PR war by taking the high road, never trading insults. Calm, principled messaging won sympathy at home and abroad. The saga proved that power isn't just economic or military, strategy and unity matter. Canada couldn't win a trade war head-on, so they changed the game. They fought on hundreds of small fronts inside the US. In a globalized world, smarts and patience are the great equalizers. When the deal was signed, both leaders claimed victory. Trump sold the USMCA as a triumph, energizing his base. But the fundamental structure of free trade remained. Canada defended its key interests: dispute panels, cultural industries, and supply-managed agriculture. The feared economic collapse never came. More importantly, Canada learned to diversify and became more resilient. Trump won the headlines. Canada won the long game. The real boss? It's complicated. Canada played a weak hand with skill, protected its interests, and emerged stronger. In the end, Canada didn't just get a deal, it got a new sense of itself.